Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Ron Ackelpool. I'm the Director of Transportation and Environment at the Mid-America Regional Council. And welcome to this morning's pre-application workshop for our 2020 suballocated call for projects. This is an activity that we do every couple of years where we go through a process to solicit applications and award federal funding to transportation projects. This year we'll be looking at federal funds for fiscal years 2023 and 2024. Many of you have been through this process before, many of you have not. We have made a few changes to the way that we conduct the call for projects. We've introduced a new kind of two-step process, and so today we'll walk through that with everyone. We'll share information about resources that you'll have available to help you fill out your applications, and answer some questions about the process as well. Before we really dive into the content of the presentation today, I just wanted to request a few things of folks. We're going to have a few MARC staff that'll be doing the bulk of the presentations, and we'll be using our webcams to talk with you. We'd ask everybody else to keep your webcams off if you don't mind, just to make it more visible to see the slides. We will be using the chat box for questions, so if you could pay attention to that and use that as a way to enter your questions as we go. We'll be compiling those and answering those really at the end of the presentations. We'd ask everyone to keep your phones muted if you could. That'll help with the audio on the call for everyone else. And we are recording the webinar, so both the presentation slides that we'll be using and an actual recording of the webinar will be available after we're done, and we'll post that along with the information on the application process for the call for projects. I really appreciate everybody's interest in the programs today, and look forward to your questions. I'm going to turn the program over to Mark Hansen, who's a principal planner here at MARC, to walk through an overview of the three federal funding programs that we're working on, the amounts that we have anticipated that we're going to have to allocate this time around, and some additional details about the process. Martin Riverola will give some additional background about the new two-step process and its relationship to the new transportation plan that our board will be considering in June. And then Caitlin Ziebers on our staff will walk through some more details about the first phase pre-application form and how to navigate that in the workshop. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the program over to Mark Hansen and turn my camera off, but I'll be monitoring and helping to answer questions as we go. So, Mark.
Great, thanks, Ron. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera on, so hopefully you can see me while we're going through this. I will cover, Ron kind of went over this already, the kind of agenda that we're going to work through today here. So we are working through step 2 here, the overview of the programming process. So next slide, please, Martin. All right, as you can see on your screen, we are programming 3 federal highway programs that we get funding allocated to the region. They are the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality, or CMAQ program, what we still refer to as the Surface Transportation Program, and then also our Surface Transportation Program Set Aside, which is kind of formerly known as the Transportation Alternatives Program. And we've developed some programming targets for each of those programs in each of the 2 states. These are 2-year targets, so this is the total amount that we'll be programming over federal fiscal years 2023 and 2024. And I should note that all funding amounts are based on 2020 obligation limitations, and they are subject to change. Obviously, there's a lot of change going on with conditions right now, and these numbers are no different. You can see the CMAQ program, we're estimating $5.6 million in Kansas over 2 years and $6.6 million in Missouri. The STP, which is the largest of the 3 programs, Kansas about $25 million, Missouri a little higher than that at $41 million, and then the Transportation Alternatives, or STP Set Aside, $2 million in Kansas and $3 million in Missouri. All told, looking at about $32.5 million in Kansas and just under $51 million in Missouri. Next slide, Martin. There we go. All right, when it comes to CMAQ, many of you are familiar that Mark breaks CMAQ into a variety of kind of what we refer to as funding pots. There are 4 of those funding pots, and they are shown at the bottom here. But before we develop a kind of an estimate of how much will be available in each of those pots, there are 3 projects that the Mark Board of Directors has elected to take kind of off of the top. Those 3 projects are our Regional Air Quality Public Education Program, our Regional Rideshare Program, and then also some money off the top for regional active transportation work that goes on. The total in each state for those 3 programs over the 2-year period is $927,000. And that is adjusted for inflation over previous years, but very consistent with each of the previous times that we've done this. Following that, we take that off the top and then distribute among the 4 pots of funding. Alternative fuel, diesel retrofit, outreach, and other has 11%. In Kansas, that equates to $514,000. Missouri, a little higher at $624,000. Bicycle pedestrian gets 15% of the funding, so there will be $701,000 available in Kansas and $851,000 in Missouri. And then traffic flow and transit each get 37% of the funds, and that equates to $1.73 million in Kansas for each of those programs and $2.1 million in Missouri for each of those programs. Next slide, Martin. When it comes to the STP program, this is the largest of the 3, and there are 2 projects that were taken off of the top. One for the Buck O'Neill Bridge, which does not impact the Kansas number. In Missouri, this $20 million is taken off of the top to fund the Buck O'Neill Bridge project. This is kind of the last 2 years of funding for this project. We did in 2021 and 2022. That was the first $20 million. In exchange for that $20 million, the city of Kansas City, Missouri will not compete for STP funds on the Missouri side. We also take some money off the top for regional Operation Greenlight funding. So this helps with the operation of the Operation Greenlight program. In Kansas, it's $420,000 over 2 years, and in Missouri, $980,000. This leaves a total anticipated for programming in Kansas of $24.5 million, and in Missouri, just over $20 million. Next slide, please. We'll do some committee assignments here, just so you know who's making determinations about the funding allocations. For STP, we have a STP priorities committee in each Kansas and Missouri that will be handling those funding determinations. For CMAQ, the alternative fuel, diesel retrofit, and outreach and other programs will be handled by Air Quality Forum. Bicycle pedestrian will be done by Active Transportation Programming Committee. Traffic flow for CMAQ will be handled by our STP priorities committees. And transit for CMAQ will be handled by the Regional Transit Coordinating Council. Transportation alternatives funding, or the STP set aside, will be handled by the Active Transportation Programming Committee. And all of these remain consistent with the last time that we programmed funds. Next slide, Martin. Here's a general programming timeline for you. We sent out notification of the call for projects on April 30th. We're in step 2, which is this call for projects pre-application workshop here on May 7th. On May 29th, the first step pre-application deadline occurs at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And we'll go through assessments and surveys related to the first step in June and July with planning committee review in there, and then we'll be providing technical and policy support to project applicants in August, as well as some information back to our programming committees as they launch into the second step of the process, which you can see at the bottom of the page there. Some of those dates are kind of left a little more nebulous than others. We intend to start that call for projects on August 3rd. But again, conditions are kind of fluid right now, and so we'll continue to work along and refine that schedule as needed, and you will have information related to all of this work going on well in advance of any steps that we take. So I think maybe that's one more slide, Martin. We do offer resources for applicants. It's our view that nothing in the application should require you really to go outside of materials that are available through Mark. So we make available all of these resources to you. Obviously, policy guidance related to The new Metropolitan Transportation Plan, Connected KC 2050, will be important, as well as programming policy statements. We do offer technical resources such as application templates, GIS mapping tools, population and employment forecasts, as well as things like the natural resources inventory. And then we also can direct you to appropriate state and federal resources for both Kansas and Missouri, as well as the federal program fact sheets. And so it kind of runs through where we are in terms of the resources available to the program, as well as things to help you along with your application. And I will turn things back over to Martin.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it. I'm Martin Riverola. I'm the Assistant Director of Transportation and Land Use at Mark, and I'll be covering information about the pre-application assessment and the assessment process, and some information about our plan as well. I am going to go ahead and turn my webcam off. I am here. I'm a live person. I'm talking, but my monitor's here on the side, and I don't want you to catch from the better side of me. So I'm going to go ahead and shut that off for now and just go through my slides. So as I said, I'll be sharing a few words about the pre-application assessment. And this is the process that will be underway once the call for projects closes and on May 29th. This is a new process that reflects policy guidance from our soon to be adopted Metropolitan Transportation Plan, Connected KC 2050. I'll be saying a few more words about that plan in a couple of minutes. But first, what does this process look like? I lost my cursor here. This is a process that we'll be launching our pre-application, and we're calling this our first step. This is an assessment that will be led by, we'll rely on the expertise of our planning and policy committees at MARC. The first step will inform the second step, which will be taking place afterwards, as Mark indicated. This second phase will be the technical application process we have used in previous rounds of programming. Many of you should be very familiar with this. I do have a listing of the planning and policy committees at the bottom left of the screen, and these are the committees that will be involved in this pre-application phase. Given that this pre-application process is new, I would like to say a few words about why this has been added. The goal has been to look for ways that projects that are submitted to compete for these regional funds are in stronger alignment with the vision and the goals that we have collectively agreed to as a region. We've also learned along the way that there's an opportunity to provide guidance and assistance to project sponsors so that the quality of the submitted projects, submitted applications is improved. So in the end, we hope and we believe that we'll be strengthening the quality and the alignment with the regional vision and goals for all these projects, which will be competing for these funds. So through this process, the role of the planning and policy committees in this programming activities will be elevated. We will be reinforcing conformance with the congestion management process for roadway capacity projects, which in a few words says that these projects should address a current congestion issue and should consider and incorporate travel demand management measures as part of a given project. And also, we believe that we will be in a position to provide guidance and project enhancement tips to sponsors as we start the full technical evaluation part of this process later on in the late summer, early fall. So our evaluation process will look at the information provided in response to the questionnaire that's out there online now, that will be seeking information about key scope of the project, project description, what are the elements that are included in the project. Once that comes in the door, staff will be looking at the responses, and we'll be doing, first of all, an eligibility screening. So we'll look and see if each project is eligible for the funds that are being applied for. We will also look and see if a project is in conformance with the various programming policies that have been previously adopted. Things like our congestion management process policy, our major river crossing policy, complete and green streets policies, et cetera. So we'll be looking at whether they conform with those. We will then review whether a project is already included in a project listing in our transportation plan, Connected KC 2050, or whether it's referenced as a supporting program in the plan. And I'll be saying a word about where that is here in a minute. We will then also look at to what degree each project or program advances strategies that are referenced in the plan as actions will be taken in the future to help our region accomplish our goals. So once the staff assessment is complete, that's where we'll be bringing in our planning and policy committees into the equation. We'll share the results of our assessment with them. Then we will ask our committee members individually and then the full committees whether they concur with the assessment, and we'll be asking for project enhancement tips and recommendations as well. So an outcome of this process, once we're done, is we will have projects submitted, categorized into 3 categories: highly aligned, or not aligned with the plan. We will arrive at those determinations based on a number of things, based on whether a project is in conformance with the applicable policies that I mentioned, whether the project is included in the various project or program listings in the plan, and the degree to which that project or that program advances a set of strategies. We will also have a sort of set of recommendations for improvements and comments, and these will be available for sponsors once we go into the technical evaluation process in the late summer, early fall. So with that, I'm going to move on to sharing just a few quick highlights of the plan, of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which obviously, as most of you probably know by now, we have branded our Connected KC 2050. This is one of the main products of work of our agency. It is one which guides all of our transportation planning work, including programming activities like this one that we're conducting now. So this is just a cover slide. So what is a transportation plan? This is it's our long range regional transportation, has a planning horizon looking out at 2050. It is a plan which establishes a regional vision for our transportation investments. It's a plan which develops policies and strategies for implementing this vision, and ultimately identifies regionally significant, financially constrained projects that correspond with this vision. Along the way towards development of this plan, we've done a whole bunch of work that has included needs assessment, a transportation needs assessment process. We've done some modeling about different outcomes we could anticipate with different kinds of investments or different growth patterns. We've done some financial revenue forecasting. We prioritized projects that were submitted in response to a call for projects for the plan. We've analyzed some new potential revenues, and we have adjusted the processes that we follow to program federal funding to projects. So that's part of what we're doing here today, among many other tasks. And we're wrapping up this work now. That work has culminated in a regional plan which identifies goals or outcomes and strategies, and we're calling them, just in a little bit more public-friendly language, things that we want, those are our goals, and how we'll get there, those are our strategies. So what are the things that we want? We want access to opportunity with a connected system that enables access to all activities. We want public health and safety with healthy communities, healthy people, safe and secure ways of getting around. We want a healthy environment where we prioritize the investments that reduce pollution and improve the environment. We want transportation choices where people have choices in how they travel around the region with ease and with health and environmental benefits. We want economic vitality where we can support a multimodal system that supports efficient movement of goods and people and supports economic development. And what are the things that we're going to do to get there? The slide here lists 5. We're calling these underlying strategies. There is a more specific listing of 19 other sort of goal-related strategies, and I'll point out to where those are. So these are the things that we'll do to get there. We'll continue our focus and energy around activity centers and the corridors that connect them. We will pursue climate protection and resilience by reducing climate risk to our transportation infrastructure while also decreasing the impact of the systems on the climate. We will consider new funding sources. We will prioritize investments, and this one is key, that bring the most benefits to make our limited resources go further. And we will leverage data and technology along the way. We will incorporate data-driven transportation planning into our plans and programs. As I mentioned, those are our key underlying strategies in our plan. Our plan identifies, sort of looking out at 2050, 30 years, about $52 billion in total revenues and expenditures. It does include almost 300 financially constrained projects at a little bit over $7 billion. Those are, again, the projects that were submitted in response to a call that we did last year. It identifies over 100 projects that are illustrative projects. Those are priority projects, but our financial analysis has shown that maybe we don't have the resources, financial resources to implement those absent new revenues. It does identify an increase in transit service and a very modest increase in roadway capacity in our region. It does also include a set of forecasts. We are forecasting now modest growth in people and jobs to our region, about 23%, a doubling of our transit trips in the region, and a more modest increase in other mode trips. It does forecast out a 9% drop in greenhouse gas emissions, which is in the right direction, but it is not sort of where we think we want to be at the end. We have packaged and produced and all the contents of the plan, and instead of living on a PDF file somewhere, they actually will live on this site that we produced and we have launched a couple of weeks ago now, connectedkc.org. The entirety of the contents can be found here. This website is meant to be public friendly, use public language, it's truly information rich. It's interconnected with embedded definitions, hyperlinks, includes a series of interactive web maps with a wealth of information. It's also meant to serve as a platform to jump out to other planning work that we have conducted and to our funding programming work that we have now. Also our engagement efforts. We do have a final engagement around the final plan draft that's going on right now as well. You may have seen some emails about that. I will say that we're proud of the look of this website. It's been a lot of work. If you have not had the time to explore it, navigate it, please do so. And certainly it will be helpful as you're putting together your applications at this point. I will just a couple more minutes before I wrap up and turn it over to our next speaker this morning. I want to just mention some our website special attention areas. These are areas or pages that are directly relevant to the pre-application questionnaire that will need to be filled out for those that are seeking funds for a given project. So I'll be showing you where to find information about a project number, if the project is already included in the plan, or if it's a supporting program in the plan. These are described in what we want pages. And then kind of walking you through a set of places where you can find what are some of these strategies or project elements, information about our complete streets, our safety countermeasures, strategies from a specific planning sustainable places plan, etc. I'll be kind of walking you through each one of these here on the slide. And then we'll turn it over. Actually, we're looking at doing a little bit of a roadshow with the site itself or the application portal. So first, for project information, if you want to find whether your project is in the plan or whether it's a supporting program, this is a landing page of connectedkc.org. Here on the screen, you should see a link to projects. So I'll be going deeper on that one, or what we want. Those are policy goals or strategies. If you click on the projects button, it takes you to the slide here on the left. And you can click on the view project list button, and a wealth of information comes up. You can find your specific project if it was submitted and prioritized for this effort. If you believe the project is not listed on the plan, but it may be listed or referenced as a supporting program, then you go to the what we want pages. I have an example of here of one of those 5, economic vitality. In each one of these 5 goal areas or what we want areas includes a listing of supporting programs. There's 3 of them here. Transportation asset management. That would be an example of a project that's looking at rebuilding the system, reconstructing the system, rehabilitating the system as it is now. Maybe a project that's not necessarily listed on the program, but if you're looking at doing a road rehabilitation improvement work, it may fit under that project, and there's a definition that is included here. If you hover over transportation asset management, I'll tell you a little bit more about what that is. Go to the next one, strategies. What if you have questions about what strategies you are advancing? A couple of different ways of getting there. Under how we'll get there, there's 5 underlying strategies, and I have here pulled up one of those, centers and corridors. So that's one of the strategies, explains what that is. Or there's a listing of more specific strategies under other, list of all different strategies, and a longer list of 19 of them show up. So I'm going to share some of those with you here in this slide. And you can see here a few of them: air quality, completing green streets, etc. And it gives you information about some links out to other work that's been done that includes a listing of these strategies that you may want to refer to as you describe what your project is trying to accomplish. Here's just a few examples of what those are. Congestion management policies. I only have a couple more slides and I'll be turning this over. We have a page marked references and application resources. This is the main landing page for connectedkc.org/funding. Check out the resources page, and this page here on the right will come up with a wealth of information and resources that we can provide to help you fill out your application. I'll share a couple on the congestion management process. We do have a number of questions about that. Links you out to a page on our site for the congestion management, where you can find what is our congestion management process policy, what are the strategies in the congestion management toolbox, and what are some of the what is our understanding of the congestion and reliability of our system in the Kansas City region. So that wraps up for what I have to share. I'm going to go ahead now and turn this over to Caitlin. Caitlin, are you here with us? Oh, I'm supposed to make you the presenter. Give me 1 second.
All right. Everybody should now be able to see the connectedkc.org/funding page that Martin referenced just a minute ago. This is where you'll need to go to apply for funding, and it has a brief description of the different types of fundings that you can link out to, and a little bit further down, we have the application process. So this is the two-step process. The first step is the pre-application and initial screening. To begin that, you'll click Fill Out Pre-application, and you'll land on a MARC member portal page. It brings you immediately to the login page, so if this is your first time accessing it, you'll need to click Register and fill out the registration information. When you click Register, it will redirect you back to the login page. Once here, you just use your credentials to log back in. And I want to point out as well, if you forget your password at any time, we do have a forgot password button. That will send you a link to reset your password. MARC staff actually doesn't have access to your credentials. So if that ever happens, you need to use the button, not email one of the staff members. Also, if for any reason you have difficulty registering or logging in, we have a report issue button. And I'll pull this up in the next page, but this will take you to a short form where you can fill out a brief description of what your issue is, some contact information. We check that daily, every morning at 8 a.m. So our goal is to get back to you within 24 hours, just to let you know that we've received it and get any issues cleared up quickly. So you'll log in, and I've actually already submitted a couple projects here, or began a couple projects, which is why you see these gray, but you'll go down at the bottom and you'll click Start New Application. This brings up the actual application form. A lot of this information is very basic. We're asking for things like the project name, description, your primary mode. The asterisks next to the numbers, those denote a required field, and those will change as you fill out the form. There are a couple questions that we've set dependency on. For example, right now you'll see current ADT, speed limit, those are required. However, if I change the project mode to bike pedestrian, those are no longer required. They're really geared towards roadway projects. So I wanted to note that, so just keep an eye on that as you fill out the form. Those will change slightly as you work your way through. We have tried to hyperlink to as many resources as we could in this form. For example, we ask on question 7 about if the project is included in the plan and its project number. So that will actually link you out to our MARC website where we have all of the projects listed. And when you open it up, it tells you very quickly what your project number is. We've done that with several of these others. These link to the Connected KC page. They'll take you straight to the Centers and Corridors webpage. So if you're unfamiliar with some of these terms or concepts, you can click out on the link and take a look. So as we go down, we ask for just descriptions about the strategies. I know Martin covered that briefly from the Connected KC, but we also ask about some of our other plans and programs, such as the Regional Safety Blueprint, if the project has any connection with the Planning or Creating Sustainable Places program, the Clean Air Action Plan. Again, all of this is hyperlinked to make it easy for you to access that resource. Towards the bottom, we have some project information. So we're asking for the total budget, the amount of federal funds, if you've dedicated anything to bike, ped infrastructure, and then also what type of funds. So again, this hyperlinks out to those specific web pages so that you can take a look at those, get a better understanding of the funds if you haven't applied before, and check requirements and eligibility. The last few questions, those are relating to the congestion management policy, as Martin briefly went over. We do link out to the congestion management toolbox, but also in the resources page, we have quite a few links relating to congestion management, so you should be able to reference those as well. The last part of this application, and I want to take a little bit more time here and go over this, is actually a mapping tool. So in the past, we've relied on descriptions to map projects ourselves. Occasionally, we've gotten JPEGs or drawn maps. This time, though, we want project sponsors to actually draw in the geometry of their project. So you'll see a map like this. And on the right-hand side, there are some pretty detailed instructions for how to use it. But today, I'm just going to go through doing a couple different types of geometries. So you'll scroll in to your project area, and let's say that you have a corridor project. You'll come to the drawing tool, and polyline is a line. You click it, you click where you want to begin, and you drag and double click to end. And if that's all you want to do, you just hit submit and you're good to go. That gives us the geometry of your project. Now, if you want to do a polygon, which is, an area, let's say you want this entire block, you can draw that in as well. If you wanted to focus in on an intersection, you could draw a polygon around that intersection, and you can do multiple geometries. As you see here, I'm able to drop in as many points, lines, polygons as I want. There are some instances where a project doesn't have a specific geometry. Maybe it's more programmatic in nature. If it covers an entire city and it doesn't have a specific geography, we do have a geographic selection option. And you can click on county, city, or none. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring up the various city limits. So let's say that my project covers the entire area of Roland Park. I could click that, and that selects the city. You can select multiple cities, you can select multiple counties. That's completely up to you. You can also clear your selected geographies in case you mess up. You can delete the geographies. It's completely customizable. So that's how the mapping tool works. Like I said, we have pretty detailed instructions in here. You can redo, undo, delete. And at any time, if you need to save progress on your application, you can click Save Progress before Submit. That's going to save where you were, and then it'll bring you back to the portal page where you can then click Edit, and it'll bring you back into that same application where you can continue to make edits. So you'll see here, it saved the geographies. That was the only thing in this form I actually filled out. When you're ready to submit your application, you just click Submit Application. And as you see here, I didn't do any of the other required fields. So those asterisks, I said keep an eye on, but we also have built into this application. If for some reason you miss one, you didn't see it, it'll let you know before you submit the application. Now, again, I mentioned the report issue button. If at any point you're struggling, it's not saving something, there's something weird going on with the form, you can click the report issue button and it will bring you to this short form. It's only a couple questions, and that'll notify staff. Again, we check it every day. The last note I want to make on this is that you really need to use Chrome or Firefox browsers. Microsoft products and Internet Explorer, they do not work well with this form, and there are glitches that happen. So Chrome and Firefox are the browsers you want to use when you're in here. That's kind of the first question we ask people if they're having any sort of issue. So that is about it. You will be able to view all of your projects here, and the status will tell you if they've been submitted. So I've not submitted anything. That'll change to submitted once I've put something in. You'll have your project title. I don't have any project titles in. You can also print. So let's say you are partway through the application and want to share that with somebody. You can print that and print and save as a JPEG or a PDF and email that to somebody. You can also print it if you want to have a hard copy for your records. And that is about it. Martin, I'll turn it back over to you. And if anybody has any questions, I haven't seen anything come in through the chat box.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. I should be back on my slide here. That really is the end of the program that we have and that we had to share with you. As Ron indicated at the beginning of our event this morning, we are going to be posting a recording in this on the connectedkc.org funding resources page. So we'll be able to find this recording, also a PDF of all these slides. We are available for any additional questions that you may have. If anybody has any other questions, or you may also reach out to us after this morning.
Hey, Martin, there was a question that came in about the application I want to answer for everybody.
Okay.
Adam asked, can multiple users modify a single project? And we responded, if you share your credentials with them. So right now, the way the system is set up, it's user specific. So you will only see the projects that you specifically create and submit. Somebody else from your agency can't automatically see those unless you give them your login credentials.
Let's see a couple of different questions that have come up here. I don't know if you want to take this one, the first one, maybe Mark. Is there a minimum funding amount for a project, $50,000?
As far as minimum funding amounts go, I believe CMAQ has a limit of about $50,000. The other ones, the only other limit per se would be in the Transportation Alternatives Program, where the maximum federal request would be $500,000. It should be stated, though, that Federal Highway has particularly been interested, especially in the STP program, about smaller amounts of federal funds being applied to very large projects. So that may be something you want to keep in mind as we work through the process.
Thank you very much, Mark. Another question that's come in, if the proposed project is not within, connected to, or part of an identified planning or creative sustainable places plan, would the answer to this question simply be no? And that is correct. Then if it's not connected or is not implementing a strategy, you just tell us so and move on to work on the next question.
Also, Martin, that 9.4 shouldn't be required. So any question that's not required, you do have the option to leave blank.
Another question says, looks like small space to write description. Could you expand view area? I'm gonna let Caitlin, I'm gonna let you take this one.
Yes, so in all of the open text boxes, you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, there are two diagonal hash marks. If you hover your mouse over that, you're actually able to pull it and kind of expand that view, and you can make that as large as you want. So that'll be a little bit easier to see what you're typing in. I also recommend, we put in the character limits. So I also recommend typing up responses in a Word document, and then you can copy and paste those without a problem as well.
I will add that one of the documents that we have posted on the resources page is a PDF file that shows the entire application and all the questions. So if you want to download that, take a look at that, start working off that format to start developing your question, that's probably a good starting point. Let me see if there's any other questions. What is the timeline to get feedback on pre-application after it is submitted? Well, let me take a stab at that. We will, May 29th will be the close of the call. For about a month after that, the staff will be doing the assessment of the various projects and prepping the engagement kind of survey tool that we will be sharing out to our planning and policy committees. That'll be going on late June, and then we're looking at convening them to have discussion around those about later on in July, to have those discussion with our planning and policy committees. By the end of July, we should be done with that work, and that feedback, the response back to our sponsors should be ready to go. We are looking at having this available to project sponsors as the technical application is underway in August. I hope I've answered your question, Jose. Let me see. And if not, please write in a follow up in the chat box. There's another question. When you submit your project, can you still modify it until the deadline on May 29th? Caitlin, I believe the answer is yes. I'll let you add anything else that may be needed.
Yes, so you'll see once you submit an application, it'll say submitted in the status bar, but you will still be able to click the edit button and go back in and make edits. That will be available until the call closes, and then that edit button will actually be changed to a view button. So you'll still have access after the 29th to view, but you won't be able to edit. One note on that though, if you do go back in after you've submitted and make edits, that will overwrite the changes we store in the database. So we won't keep track of your past submissions. If you change the budget, we're going to go with whatever is the most recent submitted budget. So just a note to that, if you do make changes, just be careful that you don't accidentally overwrite anything you don't want saved.
There's another question from Tom Guerin. May I miss this? Will the presentation be posted online? The answer is yes. We'll post a video. The video of this entire program and the PDF slides online after this morning's event. Lydiana, any consideration to extending deadline given current unstable conditions? That is a good question. Ron, do you want to take a stab at this one? I know you've been asked.
Sure, thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Martin. I'd happy to. Lydiana, that is a great question. We felt it was important to keep moving on this process to do the call for projects and make project selections later in the year, really in order to allow time for the projects to work through the state federal aid programming processes or project development processes. So at this time, we're planning on sticking with the schedule. Of course, given the uncertainty of events right now, we will be evaluating that as we go. But at this point, we are still planning on the May 29th deadline and the process that we lined out over the summer for the second phase of the call for projects. Understand that this is a difficult time for a lot of local governments, but we also want to make sure that we are allowing enough time for the folks to actually complete their projects and meet the deadlines that are going to be required in the local public agency processes for KDOT and MoDOT.
Yeah. Thank you, Ron. There's another question. For alternative fuel applications, there's still just a portion of funding available per vehicle. I think it used to be $8,000 per vehicle, still the same. I do not know the answer to this question. I don't know if Mark, you would, maybe Karen Clausen is on the line.
I'm not aware of any change that's been made. Essentially what's eligible when replacing with a regular gasoline vehicle with an alternative fuel is generally the increment cost. And I think it has been kind of the ballpark estimate had typically been around $8,000. I don't believe there's been any change to that.
Yeah. If not the case, we'll follow up. We'll follow up and make that clear. Yeah. Another question: does the alternative fuel under CMAQ include electric charging stations? Mark, do you know the answer to this one?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Brian, you're giving us a lot of questions. I appreciate those. Does replacing older hybrids that have been purchased in the past 13 years ago count, or do we have to be proposing replacing, for example, non-hybrid vehicles?
I think you can, if the vehicle is past its kind of useful life, and I imagine 13 years would be past its useful life, the key, that should be an eligible project. The key would be establishing kind of the air quality benefit. So how much benefit is a newer hybrid or a newer alternative fuel vehicle providing over the existing alternative fuel vehicle. So that's where perhaps maybe you're going to have some issue there, is determining how much new air quality benefit will be provided by that newer alternative fuel vehicle.
Thanks, Mark. A question on where on the connectedkc.org you can find the application template. I was going to answer it, but Caitlin has responded in the chat box. That's fine. I'll just say it just so if you can, so it's captured in the recording as well. Under connectedkc.org in the funding application resources. So if you go to just a funding landing page, click on the link to application resources, and then the application template is in that link. And at this point, we don't have any other questions. Maybe I'll pause for another few seconds to see if anybody else comes up with any other questions. And if not, you can always reach out to us after this morning's event.
Hey, Martin. This is Mike Lambic with MoDOT. Can I jump in real quick with something?
Please do.
Yeah, thank you. Again, this is Mike Lambic with MoDOT. This is for any Missouri applicant. Just be aware as you're having these conversations internally about your projects and putting together applications, that if you have a project on the MoDOT system, any portion of the MoDOT system, that you're having conversations with one of our area engineers, either Matt Killian in the Jackson and Cass County areas and Mark Fisher in Platte and Clay. Just make sure conversation to make sure that it is in line with what we're planning on our system, and that your scope is something that can eventually be approved and implemented. So again, if you're going to apply for a project in the MoDOT system, have a conversation with your local area engineer to work that out, which will eventually have to lead to a support letter.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. That's a great point, and I don't know if I see anyone from KDOT on the call, but I would expand that to also say, if you're a Kansas jurisdiction proposing something on KDOT system, it's very important to coordinate with the KDOT staff as well on applications. And one other point, thank you, Mike, for reminding me. I don't think we said this earlier on the call. All three of these funding programs are actually reimbursement programs. They're not grant programs per se. So for folks that have not participated in them in the past, just be aware that in order to receive the fundings, for your project, if it is selected, you will need to then enter into an agreement with your state DOT, potentially with the Federal Transit Administration, expend your own resources first, and then apply for reimbursement through them to receive your actual dollars. So Mark doesn't actually handle any of the money once the projects are selected, and nobody provides funding in advance for the projects once they're selected. So we'll make sure that point's also emphasized in the materials that we post online. And this is Jennifer has a question about this. This is actually not changed. This has always been the case for these Federal Highway Administration program funds. They've always been reimbursement programs, not grant programs.
All right, and then there's another statement from Jennifer. We provide our match to KDOT, and they administer the project.
That is essentially correct. Yeah, KDOT will not receive the federal funds for the project until they demonstrate that money has actually been spent on it. But yes, that is correct. On the Kansas side of the region, most jurisdictions do work directly with KDOT to administer their projects or to let the projects.
So I don't see any other questions. We are 50 plus minutes into this event. Ron, any parting thoughts before we close this event out?
I just thank everyone for your interest in the programs, and as we go through the next few weeks in the pre-application or phase 1 application process, please do reach out to staff, myself, Mark, Martin, or Caitlin with questions about them as you encounter them with the forms. But best of luck for everyone that's considering applying, and I appreciate your time today.
Thank you all. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.